Today we're going to rank every hero in Call of Dragons for open field battling. Whether you're free to play or pay to win, this list has incredibly helpful guidance for which heroes are worth investing in. So stick around for the very best tier list for Call of Dragons coming right up. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Call of Dragons, and I've pulled down over 14 million merits in Season 1+, the season in which you gain access to Cindrian and Freygar, the legendary archer heroes. So I'm feeling very qualified to talk about what really works and what really doesn't in Call of Dragons. I'm not just making this stuff up. This is what I've used against players that are so strong we call them tier 6 players. That's not actually a thing that exists, except they have every artifact maxed, they have every hero maxed, they've got every single thing on their accounts maxed, and they just freaking hit different. So let's talk about what works, and let's talk about what doesn't. And gosh, why don't we start with the new heroes that show up in Season 1+, because they're crazy. Freygar and also Cindrian. And the reality is that they are S tier. If you haven't seen a tier list before, all the way at the top means they're the best, and typically all the way to the left is the very best, and toward the right is the worst within that tier. Cindrian is nuts, man. He does a lot of boost to normal attack damage, which I thought would not be very exciting. No, it's cracked. It's really, really strong. It's kind of like instant proc damage in some ways because he starts to do that boosted normal attack the second he engages in combat. That comes from his 4th skill. Freygar also is extremely versatile. I've used her with flyers and ran around with cavalry, and she did great. She barely cares about marksmen at all. I feel like these two are really quality. The only thing that can hold a candle to these heroes, in fact, can stand toe-to-toe with them in terms of their value in Season 1+, Stars Reignited, is going to be mages, and mages are just so damn good. Lilia and Velen, yeah, man, they do work. The majority of damage that I dealt this season probably came from mages, followed by marksmen. So if you're looking for perspective on like the one thing that you probably move in on, it's mages. Mages have been amazing for a very long time, and when you're teched up, marksmen are really solid. Now, if you're not teched up, you know, look, marksmen have a shorter range. They get focused a lot. You need to be able to deal massive counterattack damage to get value with them. I feel like having higher tier troops goes a long way there, so just kind of keep that in mind. Mages are just absolutely freaking wicked. So now that we've talked about what I think is the best of the best, in almost every situation, these are heroes that get crazy value. Now I want to start to weigh in other heroes that I think are still really, really amazing. And at the A tier, I want to put Kanara, and I want to put Hosk, and I want to put Madeline. Now, why is it that these heroes go here? Kanara is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, if Cindrian and Freygar are good, Kanara is also really awesome. She's a legendary marksman who applies really great debuffs onto the enemy and is overall really solid. Full kit design for open field PvP. Love to see it. Hosk, on the other hand, belongs on this list in part because he's so damn versatile. And look, in a world in which you can only level up so many heroes, having versatility for where a hero goes in your roster is super valuable. I personally used him with marksmen, and I freaking loved it. I thought that using Freygar and Hosk together was fantastic. I've also heard of other combinations with Hosk being really great. You can technically use him with mages if you want, because his range is very good. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like he is a solid A quality commander. And the final hero that goes in at the A spot is going to be Madeline. Now, I was actually debating ranking her down, and Duz helped tweak this list a little bit, and I think it's better for the modifications, so thank you, Duz, for those changes. We bumped up Madeline because here's the weirdness, okay? You can technically have a big group fight and nobody runs a Madeline, and, like, you're good to go. Like, actually, it's fine. But if you had a fight where, like, the only thing your team brought was a bunch of Madelines, like, you'd take the fattest L ever, what I'm trying to say is, like, yeah, infantry are really cool and they can do great things to open up space between you and your enemy, but in really big fights, in fights that are constrained to tight spaces, like I totally understand that if your opponent doesn't know what they're doing, they'll focus the infantry, they can soak a lot of damage, but I just kind of felt like they weren't the critical role player that I wanted them to be. I'm not saying infantry aren't good. What I'm trying to say is that if you had a lineup of all mages and marksmen, you could do some serious work. And if you had a lineup of all infantry, you'd basically just be taking hospital and not getting many merits at all. And I don't know, I just can't bump Madeline higher, even though she is a wicked tank. A wicked tank. Now, this brings us to the B tier of heroes. And there are several heroes that I want to include here. That includes Nico, who is an amazing pair with a number of heroes on this list, but has really good synergy with Kanara and the Rattle Spear. Also, we're going to include Nika, who you pair with Madeline. You use her as the secondary, really good counterattack and march speed, so that the Nika and Madeline combo, really flip that around. The Madeline and Nika combo can move around the map and do work. That's what I used. And it is very tanky, and it does do good counterattack damage. But, you know, it soaks up damage and then it disappears, whereas a ranged march can just put in a ton of work. And then from here, I also want to include Thea. Now, Thea is a hero you might not have expected to see on this list, and I'll be honest, the reason she's here is probably different than the reason you're thinking. The reason that Thea goes on this list is that not only did I find she was fine to use with my mages, but I used Spring Warden Eagles, and I used Thea as the primary hero, and I used the overall tree, and I ran around and gained so many merits, crushing people in the back line. Flying cavalry is actually just monster, man. It is disgusting what you can do. Love it. Very happy with Thea. I wouldn't rank her higher because here's the thing. You can do all the fighting you want all season long, and you really don't need to have cavalry at all, actually, because in the big fights, cavalry just get dunked on, which is a little bit weird, but whatever steps in front and makes itself a super obvious target just dies. So even if you have infantry cover, if you have cavalry step in front, you're going to get racked, right? And Eagles can't charge into a big freaking line of mages because they all just turn on you and just decimate you, and marksmen as well. So I put Thea at B, and I am not comfortable ranking her higher, even though I did put in a ton of work with her and gain a ton of merits. Very happy with her performance. The final hero I'm going to put in at the B tier is actually Waldir. Now, Waldir is an amazing mage, and mages are the cornerstone to ranged DPS. The range is longer than marksmen. Yeah, you do kind of eat some nasty counterattack when you hit marksmen, but you try to target other mages and let your area of effect damage kill all the marksmen nearby. I was very happy using Waldir, and I switched from sort of a one-mage lineup, using Lilia and Velen together, to using a two-mage lineup, and that was a very good improvement. The two combos that I used were Lilia with Thea, which was like fine but not amazing, and Velen with Waldir. And that's what I was using for two mages, and I was pretty happy with that. I do kind of wish I had experimented more with other mages in the season. Like, yeah, I mean, I kind of wish I'd done, you know, a little bit of stuff with Alwyn. But let's continue on with this list. I think Waldir's spot at B is really solid. He's the highest epic that I'm going to rank today, and he's amazing. Make no mistake about it. Now, at this point, you might be a little disappointed, be like, what the hell, bro? Why are you ranking cavalry at C? And the reason is that cavalry don't have a role in big group fights. They simply do not. Look, infantry have a role. Infantry charge in and they try to soak damage. You try to charge in with some cavalry and you are doing your enemy literally a favor. Let me tell you what happens when I see cavalry charge in. All my ranged marches go focus the cavalry. And if we're doing our job right, we'll have infantry that stop you from hitting our backline anyways. Doesn't always work out that way. But if we really wreck you, what ends up happening is that you charge in with infantry and cavalry, and instead of targeting your infantry, which do tons of counterattack, we get to target your cavalry, which don't do any counterattack, and we do splash damage to everything else. So, yeah, no, cavalry are just like actively bad for charging in to an enemy line, which means the role is primarily back lane, backfield disruption, which is something I've said many times. And when I, only had regular cavalry, I loved doing that with Bakshi and Emrys. You could do some wicked stuff. And as soon as I got my hands on flying cavalry, I stopped using regular cavalry altogether. Because at that point, look, if I can, dodge a fight with someone I don't feel like fighting, or in a disadvantageous situation by just flying over a river, flying over a mountain, and continuing on my merry way, man, I pulled down so many 50, 60, 70,000 merit reports just running around with Thea and Craig. It was disgusting. Had a lot of fun doing that. And you just attack targets of opportunity. Look, people say that's a sissy thing to do, but hospital is hospital. Putting your enemy's troops into the hospital is crucial. And you have to understand that cavalry are kind of like your rogue class from MMOs. You need to use them for strategic, high damage situations, and then you get out of there. And that's what cavalry are for. To just run it down like a bozo is not a great way to play cavalry, in my opinion. Of course, people can do whatever they want. Okay. From here, I of course need to include Craig, because as I mentioned, he was just so busted with Thea. He does area of effect damage over time, and it's actually really good. The real secret to Craig, are you ready? Are you ready for the real secret? I feel like I've made a video about this already, but here's what you do is you target the weakest thing and let your area of effect damage kill all the stuff that would do high counterattack to you. Oh my god. It's crazy, man, what you can do with Thea and with Craig. And quite frankly, you could put Craig with any of the marksmen and have a damn good time. Okay, Craig doesn't even really care about marksmen all that much. I used him with flying cavalry and he was outstanding. What he really cares about is that the heroes and troops are all doing physical damage. You can't use him with mages. Okay, he doesn't do magic damage, so you do 0 skill damage if you do that. Pair with ideally marksman, or you could do cavalry. Okay, from here, now we talk about D tier, and I'm gonna just lop a bunch of heroes into this category. They're not actually that bad. Like, this makes them seem really bad, but they're just actually not. Okay, and that includes Garwood, who I feel like, yes, he adds a tremendous amount of sustain, but he's, in my opinion, not as exciting as Nika, who does more counterattack. I kind of want you to get wrecked when you hit me. We've also got Alistair here, who, look, I just, don't think there's a lot of a role for him. I'm not saying you can't get some crazy reports in Season 1. We're talking about Season 1+, when people have more developed rosters, okay? They're not going to let you get to the back line as easily or as often. People are better at using barricades to gum you up from going anywhere. I feel like he's good, but I couldn't put him higher than a D. Similarly, I got to put Atheist at a D. I honestly am tempted to swap in Atheist instead of Thea to use with my mages, because I think I would just crank out more damage than Thea, but I haven't yet. Atheist is great, but doesn't do area of effect damage, which is what you really kind of want from mages. And at this point, I'm not using Celestials anymore. I'm no longer the League of Order, so it's not like I could use a flying unit here and get his extra perks. Not that he has that many of them for using a flying unit. I would say Gwanwyn actually is pretty cool. She does instant proc damage over time from her awakening. If I just read that off to you really quickly, I feel like this is something I've kind of under leveraged, but I also feel like I have plenty of legendary heroes to use with my marksmen. But when Gwanwyn launches a normal attack, they have a 50% chance to poison the target. You're dealing hero skill damage every second, physical factor 100 for 3 seconds. That's actually really good. Instant proc damage on your marksman is really, really good. I actually really like that. I would definitely consider using her more, but compared to area of effect damage that you get on Craig, Craig is just next level, baby. Craig is just next level. Bakar also, I feel like you could rank him down, but you could also leave him where he is. Bakar's secret is that when he gets super low, you start to bleed out your enemies from counterattacks, which is really cool. I might mess around with that more later in the season, but also he is probably the hero you should use as the primary for defending your city, I would think. You really want the talent tree that you get for garrisoning, and he gives you that, I think, in the best way. I suppose technically you could use a Garwood, but healing for city defense is not amazing. You're kind of like bringing troops back just to die again. I'd rather do more damage to them, and Bakar does that really well, especially when he's awakened. And lastly, Alwyn. Bro, what the hell are you doing up at the C tier? I did not intentionally put Alwyn at the C tier. My apologies to Alwyn and to the viewer who may be thinking, which is cool, why didn't you talk about Alwyn at a C, brother? I think that Alwyn is really good as a primary if you're free to play. And as a mage, he's strong. I'm going to bump him all the way to the left. I'm going to bring Atheist over here. I'm going to bring Gwanwyn over. I'm going to bring... Yeah, there we go. That's the order I would probably put them in. And it's entirely possible Gwanwyn should even be moved more to the left there in terms of her priority, okay? From here, we've got a couple heroes. And I mean, you know, look, the Gathering heroes and the Peacekeeping heroes. I'm not saying you can't do some cool stuff with these heroes. I've seen people try to force Indus into an infantry combo. I just don't think it's that good. I would rather be doing lots of counterattack. Why is that? Infantry, as a unit, their trait is that they get more defense when they get low. So at that point, you just want really high counterattack so that they kill themselves and you barely take any damage. That's the whole point of infantry. Indus misses that point, in my opinion. She reduces the counterattack damage she takes, but you do not care about that. You need to boost the counterattack damage that you deal. Yes, she does make you a little bit more tanky, and she's got some healing. I totally understand that. I just don't think that's where it's at. You'd rather just use Garwood if that's what you're trying to do, in my opinion. I also think Eliana is insanely versatile and would work in a lot of different places and is almost certainly better than I'm giving her credit for. Although, I don't know, man. I mean, she does a little bit of shielding, a little bit of damage. She gives you a fair amount of defense. She boosts the normal attack damage that you take, which is like good. It's like tanky. She heals you a little bit, but like she's kind of unremarkable. Like she's versatile. She's like, I don't know, like an epic tier Hosk, sort of, but not even as much of a theme on like counterattack and normal attack boosts. So, you know, and she doesn't even have any overly exciting talent trees. I don't find the support tree to be particularly exciting. Maybe I would revise this because, quite frankly, every hero does pretty darn well overall, but I've tried to be super aggressive in this tier list here to help differentiate between what really makes the cut and what doesn't. And when I've reviewed this with other people, I think we've done a pretty good job here. So definitely let me know down below in the comments what you think of this list. Again, this is based on my experience battling up to over 14 million merits in Season 1+ in Call of Dragons. If you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here and consider subscribing to the channel for Call of Dragons videos designed to help you get value and smash your enemies. If you're looking for a video about the best artifacts, I'll have a card in the end screen in just a moment. And if you're wondering about some hero pairings, I'll show you what I thought going into this season would be some of the best pairs for Season 1+. Card will be in the end screen for that in just a second. I'll just say that the one combo I just dramatically underestimated how good it would be was Sindrian with Freygar. I'm like, yeah, the new archers freaking slap, man. They're really crazy. Until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.